What's up guys? So back to do another little video for you today. Today's going to be slightly different to before. In the previous videos what we've done is a full haircut. So today I'm actually just going to go through part of a haircut with you guys and something a little bit more simple, basic and really applicable to the shop floor. So really just one basic technique, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how to cut the top and how to prepare the top, I should say, of a basic textured men's cut before you go into the clipper work. Because that's something that I get asked a lot when I do classes or when I do demonstrations of haircuts, is how to actually judge and cut the top first, and the different techniques, where to start, how to start, and how to put that structure in before you go into your clipper work. So pretty much with the mannequin that I have today, I've only taken a section through the top, one square panel. I've left out these little parts that are towards the front, which will be actually part of the fringe. But when I work on the shop floor, I don't even really need to put a clip in this. I can just really groom the hair out of the way, spray it down with water, groom it out of the way. And so yeah, like pretty much what I want to do first and foremost is show you guys what it looked like beforehand. So this is going to be restyle. So this has been worn off the face previously. So I'll just get Mikey to, can you see it there? Yeah. So this is what we had just before now. So as you can remember from the last video that I did, something loose, mid-length, we cut with the razor, and we're going to restyle it to a shape that is just worn forward, really effortless, kind of sporty, textured type of look. So yeah, this is going to be very shop floor like relatable. You know, a lot of our clients and a lot of my clients will actually get haircuts like this. So I'm just going to go through and explain my thought process behind why I do certain things. So I'm going to go through, and we may as well start, and because as I start cutting the hair, I'll be able to explain the reasons why I do everything, okay? So if you want to come a bit closer, Mikey, and just see the top of the haircut, just literally a square kind of panel, just so it separates the top and the sides. And we're leaving out that length in the front, just to save it for later. I don't want to cut that off and make the shape too narrow just yet, but overall the haircut's actually going to be quite short on the top, so that's all good. So pretty much I'm going to start the haircut at the connection point between the top and sides. So that's where I always want to create my first guideline. So where the clipper will meet the top of the haircut. So really, to do this type of, to cut the top of the hair first, instead of going in with my clippers first, to cut the top of the hair first, you really have to visualize what the haircut's going to end up like in the end. To begin with, you obviously study the hair growth patterns and different things, so the fixed factors, the things that we can't change, the hair type, how thick it is, what color it is, how high we want to go with the fade, etc. Like these are all going to be factors that we're going to have to take into consideration before we even start cutting the hair at all. So where I've taken my section, the first section, is right at the rounding of the head, where the hair does not sit negatively. It will just sit nicely, and I've clipped that top panel out of the way. And generally, what you'll get it with, it's different on this mannequin, but most clients will have quite a clockwise or anti-clockwise hair growth pattern through the back. So we're going to want to start there usually, but because there's not really much of a hair growth pattern here, we're just going to start smack bang in the middle. So I'm going to go through two different techniques. Now there's a few different ways that you can put in your first guideline. You can use diagonal graduation, so going from, like just going at an angle, working down sections forward. And what that's going to do is it's going to remove a lot of weight as well as putting in the shape. Or you can do block graduation if you want to hold on to more weight. That would be good in the case that somebody's hair was quite light and fine in colour, and you wanted to retain most of that weight. So that's for retention. Or you could just elevate the hair completely from underneath, and what that's going to do is remove a lot of weight and give it quite a round shape. That's if you know you're going to go really short to the top. So I'm going to try my best to go through a few different techniques with that. I think on the right hand side of the mannequin, what I'm going to do is some diagonal graduation. So I'm going to work that round and explain as to what that's going to do. And on the left hand side, I'm going to go through block graduation. So I'm going to start at the center back, and I'm going to take my first section and I'm going to work it in the shape in which I want the hair to sit. So you can see it's not even that small of a section, it's pretty big. And I'm going to pick it up, and when I press my fingers to the scalp, I know that like a number 3 or a number 2 is going to run into that hair pretty easily, because when my fingers are as close to the scalp as possible, I know that when I make that cut, that it's going to like be around a number 3 or 4. So what we need to be careful of through the crown is that we elevate our finger angle enough to leave enough length through the crown, because if we take that too short, if we really round it in and press our fingers to the scalp, it doesn't leave us much options with the length through the top. So what I want to do is I want to feel the rounding of the head, and my fingers at the bottom of this section, especially through the crown area, are going to be pressed pretty tight to the scalp. So my first cut is going to be pretty tight to the scalp, and as I move up, I'm going to lift my fingers away from the scalp, always making sure the hair at the root is coming out consistently and at 90 degrees. So that's my first guideline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that around. So there's my first guideline, and everything here will come back to. So I'm going to take another section similar width, and I'm going to over direct that back to my first one. Again, making sure I'm pressing my fingers to the scalp so you can see your last section underneath. So a lot of the time when I do a class, I get asked why I would cut the top of the hair first and not just go in with the sides. So in case of this, I'm going to be doing a restyle. So I'm going from something that was worn back off the face to something that's worn forward and is quite short and messy and really easy for my client to maintain. So it's very functional, suitable haircut for the majority of men really. And by cutting the top first, I'm actually instilling the structure before I go into my clipper work. So it's giving me a little bit more of an idea, especially for new clients, it's giving me an idea of how their head shape is, if there's any impurities, so that when I go into my clipper work, I can do that more confidently. Plus I can create my first guideline, which is the connection point again, the connection point between the top and the sides. I'm creating that first. So that way, when I do go into my clipper work, I'm confident and I know I'm not going any higher than that with my clippers, because in many cases what we get in with fading especially is if we start with the sides first and we go in with number 3 or 2 or whatever the number you may choose, within the first few minutes you may have already eliminated a lot of options. You'll have gone too high and you've misjudged the hair type, the head shape, everything. So this just gives us a really good idea of the feel of the hair, like how thick it is, what way it reacts, and it just lets us go in with our clipper work with more confidence. So anyway, I'll get back to cutting, and I'll keep chatting about why certain things are done this way. But for the most part, when I have a new client, a lot of the time I'll start with the top first. The only time this wouldn't be applicable is if you had a client that came back every week or every couple of weeks, you were familiar with their head shape, you didn't have to cut the top of their hair first. So as I'm getting around the corner from the crown, what I'm going to start to do is bring my fingers tighter to the scalp through the contour of the head. And this way I know that when I run my clippers and use the bevel of the clipper off the side of the head, that it's going to blend into this hair really nicely. So again, just always checking underneath. Now when I'm working in the shop, I don't always have to check underneath, like I can just do another section like so, take it back to my previous, and keep working it forward, because I'm confident I know where my finger position is and being consistent with that. But when you start, always make sure that you're just checking underneath. So by doing diagonal graduation like this, what you're actually doing through the rounding of the head is creating a triangular shape. So the hair is going to be graduated. It's going to be going from shorter to longer, and that is actually helping with the blending process. The reason why you choose to do diagonal graduation removes more weight and also provides a slim head hugging shape throughout the corner. And when we get to the other side, I'll explain a little bit more about why you do block graduation in certain cases. But if someone's got quite thick, dark hair, I would say diagonal graduation would be my favorite technique. So you're just following it all the way back. Now, you can see it already that that's creating a weight line through the contour. And everything underneath here is going to be my clipper work, and which I'll show at the end. I'll run on number 3 at the end up to this and show you exactly how it works. So when I'm working in the shop, general rule of thumb is I'll spend about 15 minutes on the top of the hair. I'll put my shape and structure in, put in some product, dry it all off, and then go into my clipper work. And again, it's just a cleaner way of working, I feel. You can see that now, that's one side complete with the diagonal graduation. It's just a cleaner way of working, you know, especially if you have to wash someone's hair. You don't want to, plus it's more time efficient, so it's cleaner and it's more time efficient. You don't want to be drying their hair off, going up the sides, wetting it down again, getting a lot of small hair stuck to the scalp. It just gets a bit messy. Okay, so I'm going to go and work through the other side now. So I'm going to go back to the crown. And the reason why I've done the right hand side first is because for me being right handed, it's more of an awkward position for me, and it's the side that I'm least comfortable with. So I always like to do the side that I'm least comfortable with first, and then come back and do the side that I'm more comfortable with. So if you want to come back and have a look at the crown here, maybe. What's up, man? How are you doing? Alright, no worries. Sorry, it's one of the points. So just coming back to the crown again, and that was funny. As you can see, I'm not until this corner. I'm going to do diagonal graduation, but it's going to be pretty much the same thing as the other side of the head. Okay, but until we get to this corner, I'll work diagonally, and then I'll show you how to do the block graduation. So the only thing that's going to change now, there's 2 things that are going to change. It's going to be the angle of the section and the angle of my fingers and my body. So my elbow is obviously going to be lower, and it's going to be more comfortable for me. So I can actually take my side from here and just work it through. Again, the same principles apply. Watching the root, checking underneath, just making the cut, making sure that I'm leaving enough length through the crown, in which I can always remove later. Okay. Slightly like this. So again, just following my sections around. Really what I'm trying to do is take each section and make each cut in the most natural way the hair is going to sit as possible. We don't want to manipulate any of the sections and change the way that they're sitting. That's going to affect how it's going to work. We put the clippers through it. So this is going to be my last section on diagonal graduation, and I'll show you and explain a little bit about block. So underneath, you can just check, make sure everything's there. Okay. If you were to look at the back now, you'll be able to see that that's creating a nice fluid shape to the head, and leaving enough length and weight through the crown for us to come back and refine that later. Okay, so through this side now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work some block graduation. And that is pretty much retaining weight, so holding on to as much weight as possible. Now, when doing block graduation, the reason why I'd like to do this on a client is if they had really fine hair or really light in colour, you are not sure if the diagonal graduation is going to take too much length and weight out of it. So if I want to actually retain weight or go for like a really heavy transition between the top and sides, then I'll hold on to as much weight as possible by combing down and pressing my fingers to the scalp. And like if you come in closer there, Mike, you'll be able to see. I'm just going to follow the shape of the head, cut a horizontal line. Now when you do block graduation, what you might end up having to do is more refinement in terms of scissor over comb. It is a little bit of a quicker way of doing it, but afterwards it's going to leave a heavier line. So when you leave a heavier line, you might have to do more refinement work afterwards. But that's fine. It really just depends on what type of haircut you're doing in terms of the fade. If you're leaving it really heavy through the sides, or you want it to be a little bit softer and more blended. So it's just good to go through two of them techniques. So that's pretty much the top, or the sides done, I should say, the connection point between the sides and the top. So everything underneath here now, I know is going to be flipper work. You can really see that line quite easily too. Everything underneath is going to be where I work with my clippers. So going through the top, I'll come back around to the front. I can pretty much do most of this in the front now. Very, very simple, basic technique, in which I'm doing a lot of clients for just your basic men's haircut. I'll tighten this up a little. Okay. I'm going to start with a profile guide, right down the center of the head. And this is going to determine the overall length on the top of the hair. Just making sure you're always working clean as well. Will benefit you long term in terms of going, making your decisions and stuff like that. Sorry guys, just tight this. Okay, so to get my guide for the top, this is going to be quite a short style. To get my guide from the top, I'm going to come in and take this section. I'm going to bring a reference point from the crown and work forwards in a square motion. Now when I'm working on the shop floor, I do like to point cut everything through the top. That way it's kind of killing two birds with one stone, especially for a style like this where it's going to be quite short and textured anyway. Making sure the hair from the root is coming up consistently. And as you get towards the front, keeping it square, this cutting line. And by keeping that square, we're automatically keeping some more length through the front. So by keeping a square cutting line, through the front as the head starts to round. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand at the back and I'm going to push that profile guide into the right hand panel, and I'm going to work forward, taking horizontal sections. And as you can see, when I pull this section up, you're going to get quite a big difference in length in the middle. You have my profile guide here, to the left, to my left, and on the right you can see where the graduation through the sides is already. So I'm going to pull that up square to the profile guide, and again just point cut that through. I'm going to work forward, taking equal size sections, all about a finger's depth or so. Square to the profile guide, point cut that out, and just moving forward. Now because we're wearing it in quite a textured, messy style, making sure the shape is really precise isn't actually that important. It's, as long as we are pretty consistent with our technique, it doesn't have to be completely perfect, because what we'll do is we'll cross check it afterwards. I just want to show you a salon efficient way of doing things, because we don't always have the time to be able to section everything out absolutely perfectly, and by doing it this way it just saves us a lot of time, and it's equally as effective if you know what you're doing, making the correct judgment. So always bringing each section slightly back into the last, so slightly over directing each section back to the last one. And coming right to the front now. You can see your last section underneath. Now, by keeping it square to the profile guide, what we're going to end up with is a slight corner between the graduation and the length through the top. So it's going to end up with quite like a little point through the corner here. And what I like to do is just come through the corner, literally from the front, and over direct everything back. Just cut that corner out, like just point cut it out. And by point cutting it, it doesn't round it too much, because when you point cut the hair, we all know as stylists that it's leaving shorter and longer hairs. So the shorter hairs help the longer hairs move, creating texture. So even though that is technically rounded, when I bring the clipper up to this point, it's going to come and look quite square, you know. So that's pretty much it for one side. I'm going to repeat the same on the opposite side, and then when we dry it off, we can do our ultimate like refinement towards the end. So I'm going to go back. I'll just weigh it down slightly. I'm going to take half of my profile guide, and now instead of working through the right hand panel, I'm going to push everything into the left hand panel. So I'm taking a bit of that guide with me, and same process as the opposite side. I'm just going to work through the left, and straight away you can see there's a big difference in length. Now this is going to be slightly different on this side because, like I said, I block graduated the sides, so there might be a slight bit more of a difference in terms of the corner. Because when we diagonally graduated this side, you're automatically starting that blending process through the corner. This side is leaving it a lot heavier. just working forward again, making sure I'm pulling the hair up at 90 degrees from the root and keeping it square to my profile guide, and working forward. Now, in my past videos I spoke about control, and in terms of if I was to wear the haircut back off the face, I'd really want to be in control of my horizontal shape and my vertical shape. But with a style like this, when it's quite short and messy and textured, you don't really have to get too technical about things. I mean, this is the type of style that a client should wear, and when he gets out of bed in the morning, it shouldn't look that different to when it's styled. So something just really messy and textured, which is high functioning. Don't have to put a lot of effort into it every day, especially if they don't have a hairdryer or if they don't have the time to blow dry their hair. This is a really good style for them to work with. It grows out nice too, you know, it's nice and balanced. It's one of my favourite types of trims to do, even though it's so simple and basic. It's one of my very favourite haircuts to do. So again, getting to the very front. And the front is similar principle to the crown. I always like to leave a little bit of extra length because it's such a focal point of the haircut that afterwards I can always come back through and take that off, but when it's dry. Okay, so what you're going to be able to see now, we'll comb everything down, is more of a corner and more of a heaviness through here than we had on the right hand side. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go through following the rounding of the head. I'm going to look at my shortest point through the top, and I'm going to look at my shortest point through the corner, and just point cut out that difference. Like you can see, it's nothing too technical. I'm just like over directing and everything back the whole way. That's pretty much it. Really, before I go and blow dry the hair, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cross check it, and this is a very simple and easy way to cross check a haircut. So I'm going to stand on a slightly diagonal kind of angle on the top. I'm going to come to the front hairline, and I'm just going to work everything back, and anything that's kind of a little bit off. I use the white side because these mannequins' hair can be quite difficult. But if there's anything that's jumping out at me that I didn't get, which I can't quite see, I'll try and put it off, but that's pretty spot on. Same this side, come to the opposite corner, pick up some of the hair at the front hairline, come through and point cut it if there's anything. But as you can see, there's really not much to come off here. So I'm going to go through and put some texture spray in there and blow dry it through, and you'll be able to see what the result is. Okay, so some texture spray. Maybe like 5 or 6 go up to that. I'm going to go through without any nozzle on the hairdryer. I'm going to start at the back where I started cutting. And whatever way the hair growth pattern is moving, I'm just going to let the hairdryer do its thing. I'm just going to let it circle it anti-clockwise, clockwise, whatever it may be. And making sure as well that I'm drying up everything underneath before I get into my clippers, because we want the scalp to be as dry as possible underneath, so it's going to give us a clean surface to work with. Okay. Going through and drying through the insides first. And when I'm drying my client's hair in the shop, I always like to do it without the nozzle and with my hands as much as possible, especially for a style like this, because I want it to be achievable for them, and I want to show them that I'm not actually putting that much effort into their hair, but it still looks good. And especially, you know, if you've got somebody who's got dead poker straight hair, this is going to be a really good style for them, because they're not going to have to actually worry too much about it looking perfect. If you give somebody with poker straight hair a side part or something like that, it's going to be really like hard for them to manage. So just working a textured kind of messy look into it will actually help combat that. As you can see, I'm starting from the back, working forward, working my fingers into the hair, and ultimately creating texture and movement. And at the end, I just like to bring that fringe up. And this is just one version of this haircut. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could take the fringe a lot shorter. It just really depends on your choice of length. Lots of different lengths that you could do for this type of style. But this is just a very basic way of cutting a type of sporty textured look. And preparing the top first. So you can see now, even in terms of working clean, by cutting and styling the top of the hair first, now I'm going to have a much better idea of what type of fade is going to look nice with the top. I'm going to be confident in how their hair is going to react to the clippers. I'm aware of their head shape, if there's any impurities in the head shape. And when it's styled and it's already pre-styled, I'm saving myself time. You know, if I had to cut the top first, or the sides first I should say, if I was to cut the sides first and then go wet the hair down, you're getting all this hair sticking to the scalp, just making things a lot more messy and less efficient for you at the end. So I'm not going to go through and do a whole fade or anything on these sides. You could do a number of things from here. You could take it really short, all the way to 0. You could take it to a number 3 and do like a nice taper or something. But really what I want to do is just show you how to add more texture, and I want to run the clipper up to contour of the head, the rounding of the head where we started, and just show you how it works. Okay, so here we are in the shop floor, or on the shop floor, roughly about 15 minutes or so into our haircut, maybe 20 if it's a restyle of a 45-minute appointment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just comb the hair into the position in which I cut it. I'm going to take my number 3 and using the bevel of the blade and the rounding of the head, I'm just going to run that, flicking it into the graduation and the shape that I created. So not too far above it and not too far underneath it, just right into it. And if you were to look at it from the side, you can see that when I'm getting to the rounding of the head, the clipper is flicking out. And look at that and how much time that's going to save us in doing clipper over comb or scissor over comb. And it's just about making that right decision from the start. You can see that's nice and blended. And you know, I still like to go through and refine things, of course. I still use clipper over comb or scissor over comb if necessary, but a lot of the time it's not necessary. Here, you've just saved yourself a whole lot of time. You know, initially when you start cutting the top of someone's hair first, you might be a little bit afraid that it's going to take too much time, so you just go in with the clipper work and blast out a lot of the bulk, but what that ends up doing is actually losing time in the long run. So you can see straight away that that's setting yourself up for like a nice fade, essentially. Same thing on the opposite side. We'll go through and do that again. So again, combing the hair into the position that you want it to be in. I always like to start behind the ear, where the hair is thickest and condenses most. It's the same thickness all over on these mannequins, but you can imagine if I was on the shop floor now. Same thing through this side, right up to that connecting point, just flicking into the hair. As you can see on this side, I don't know if it's evident on the camera, but you can definitely see a heavier line, like through the contour, because of our choice to use block graduation over diagonal. He looks like one of my cousins now back in Ireland with the red hair. Alright, so through the back. Here it comes directly at the back now. Right up to that connecting point through the crown. You can see I'm being really loose and fluid with the motion of my clippers. I'm not trying to create any more lines, I'm adding to the graduation. So by flicking it out, it's adding to the graduation, not taking away from it. And you can see I left that longer bit around the crown so that I can refine that afterwards. But that's pretty much the idea, right? From here you can go anywhere with the haircut. You can do a skin fade, you can do a taper, whatever you please really. But that's pretty much the bones of it, you know, getting it to this stage. If I need to take more weight around the crown, I'll just come to the opposite side, pick it up, you know, point cut it out that way. Really just add some more texture to it. But in terms of refinement, you can spend as long as you want refining this type of thing, but as you can see, it's just going to be quite a easy haircut to manage. I mean, especially if you have less length in the front. You don't have to have this type of length through the front, but you know, if there's any corners or you need to remove any of this excess weight to the crown that we left to begin with, just come to the opposite side and pick it up. This side is a lot more fluid, as you can already see, due to the diagonal graduation. I just want to have a look at that myself in the mirror, to be honest. And, you know, you get the idea of it. It's loose, it's textured. I don't even have to actually go in with that much product or anything afterwards, because it already looks good. And that's a really good way to show your clients too, you know, like no matter what way you wear this haircut, you know, it's not going to look that much different. But yeah, there's multiple different ways that you can refine this in terms of technique through the sides. You know, I can take some scissor off a comb and come in and, like, you know, just soften things with some scissor over comb. But that's the general idea. So that's pretty much just what I wanted to show you today. Something simple, very basic, very applicable to the hair on the shop floor when you're working under time restriction, and yeah, pretty much how to connect and judge that side connection through the top and side. So hopefully that helps, and if you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll be back for another haircut very shortly. Thank you.